Hey everyone, my name's Jonathan Bruce. So fun to be here. Thank you to Matt for having me. So I'm Jonathan Bruce. I'm part of Cloudflare. I've been with Cloudflare for a little over 4 months. I'll tell you a little about my history in a few minutes, but let's dig in. Okay, looking forward to the journey that we are on. And so I'm here for a very specific reason because I'm part of a team at Cloudflare who's building the next generation platform at the edge. But let me take a quick field poll here. Who here is familiar with Cloudflare? That's great. That makes my job so much easier. The journey we are on here, I feel, is like an infrastructure revolution. I've been around the block a couple of times. I'm 20 years in this business. And when I started, 1990s, 2000, wholly owned data centers is the way in which if you had an app or had an idea, you'd have to go after and build all this stuff for yourself. Then we find ourselves in a happy world whereby I had infrastructure on demand, where I was renting things. And now we find ourselves at the point whereby we have more serverless computing opportunity ahead of us. And Cloudflare is completely part of that. What it means for me, from a serverless perspective, is that I get to think about the problems I want to think about. I'm not going to worry about all these kind of considerations about the costs and the controls. That, to an extent, IS helped with me, but serverless really kind of opens it up to a new opportunity, new capability. And from the customers that I see, we're seeing really some exciting things going on here. But honestly, the most exciting thing for me is the cost revolution. So we're moving from thinking about how much you're paying for machines to what I love to call the Chinese menu. If anyone who runs their infrastructure on Amazon, they have this impossible calculator, which if anyone can figure out, please come talk to me, because I'd love to know. I don't know how that possibly would work. But it's all these kind of considerations you have to put in terms of like what's your CPU time, how much you're going to pay for storage. The one I really detest is my data egress. But I really want to just think about my request. How much am I going to pay for my requests? Which is very synchronous and synonymous with how serverless computing should have been thinking about. But I want to talk to you about how Cloudflare is going to be part of this program. Now, unfortunately, this looks like the world's worst slide I've ever produced, so let me kind of help you through this. There's actually all these dots represent the Cloudflare points of presence. We have about 152 of them around the world. So this is North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia. So apologize for the terrible slide. But what's really interesting about Cloudflare, at this time, we have 9 million plus customers growing every day at some spectacular rates. Really interestingly also, about 10% of the internet traffic today globally runs through Cloudflare infrastructure. And we see people bringing a variety of different properties to our infrastructure to take advantage of core capabilities of greater performance and reliability. Not to get too salesy on this, just to kind of give you some basis, is the core Cloudflare Advantage why people come to us is about greater scalability because they leverage our network, tighter integration across security and performance, and greater reliability. But the real meat of this conversation today is about something called Cloudflare Workers. Now, another show of hands. Who's heard about Cloudflare Workers? Great. This is awesome. Now, again, makes my job really easy, but I think what we've done with Cloudflare Workers, and I've been very privileged to join Cloudflare as running product. Some of you may know Kenton Varda, who's been our architect behind this project, who's really been the driving force of this. So I have to do a quick shout out for him, of course. So Kenton really came to think about what is the really core design goal for Cloudflare Workers. Because what we want to do is we want to put Cloudflare's infrastructure into your hands. We want to put it into your hands so you can build the custom capabilities using a standard kind of capability such that you can bring your complex logic not only to the edge, but actually run your infrastructure and run your business processes closer to your customers. So in a sense, we wanted to do this using kind of some capabilities available to us. So number one choice is we are using the same API as the W3C Service Workers API. We wanted to run faster and with less memory than Node.js processes. Critically, we wanted to allow arbitrary sub-requests and computation. And as you'll see, that allows us to do super interesting things with workers running on the edge. And moreover, It's about making sure our developer community understand it and really are able to reason about what workers can do for us. The other great decision that was made early on in this project that is based on the V8 JavaScript engine, and many of you are using that day to day. That's part of the Chrome capability. It gives us a whole set of capabilities, critically for the kind of use cases we want to support workers. That's about building, in process, very immediate capabilities that are highly sensitive to any latency concerns. Guess what? V8 is ideally placed to do this because it's built for a startup. All right. So with workers, what we're seeing people doing is really build a whole set of different capabilities. I'll walk you through some of the technical details of the journey of a worker throughout Cloudflare. But let's take a few minutes on this perspective. What we are seeing people doing is building capabilities whereby they can not only improve their security posture of their infrastructure, they're now doing it at the edge so that they can protect their origin from bad things happening. One of my favorite examples is a crowd called Report URI. Go look them up, they're great. And they process a ton of JSON, and they now can process that on the edge and never actually process that within their origin, which would cause some irresponsible and undesirable security effects. We're seeing a ton of people doing user personalization as well, and I have a demo that we'll run you through on that as well. What else? And a bunch of kind of infrastructural cost reduction that we're seeing as well. Super, super interesting. It's a great developer tool. We're running in JavaScript, getting a ton of enthusiasm about it, and we're really excited to be able to put it into our hands. So, complex business logic at your edge. How does it actually interact with it, and what are the kind of use cases that we see? So, personalized user experiences, a bunch of A/B testing, detecting bot activity, identifying users at the edge, and so much more. You know what? It's a platform. I am in a happy position that I get surprised with what people are doing with this every day. Actually, I have a very interesting drone use case that I'm working on that it's not quite there yet, but next time I come here, I'll show you how it works. Okay, I'm feeling brave, so we're going to do a demo, okay? Who's up for a demo? All right. So here we have Cloudflare workers. Now, some of you might remember the Cloudflare campaign when we did 1.1.1.1. Who knows what that is? It's great. And are you using 1.1.1? That's excellent. So 1.1.1 does, it gives us a public DNS that in effect helps in privacy controls for any DNS lookups. And it's a service we offer for free at Cloudflare. We're getting a ton of traction on it. So I took a step back and said, great, this has been a really interesting marketing exercise. We should think about how we can potentially apply workers to this. So how will I do this? So what 1.1.1 is really all about, it's about internet data privacy. So I took a think about what that might mean and really kind of took a look at, how could I use Cloudflare as a marketing tool? Now, why is it a marketing tool? Well, I came from Salesforce before I was at Cloudflare Workers, so sometimes my Salesforce brain kicks in. So work with me on this one, and we'll walk you through this. So this is a very bland, boring page that talks about 1.1.1. I have some very bland, boring text here that doesn't really tell me much. How could I possibly use workers to actually do something interesting with this? But what I really want to do is I want to make it locally interesting, and I want to make the Cloudflare network work for me. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to build a worker to do a couple of things. I'm going to make sure I translate the copy for this marketing based on where I see the requests. Remember how Cloudflare works? We've got points of presence everywhere. We run workers everywhere. So as the requests come in, I know where the requests are coming, so I'm going to translate it on demand. I'm also going to do something super interesting. So I'm actually going to wire in a whole set of services to make it even more interesting. So the journey we're going to go on here is we're going to capture these requests coming in here. So here you see our worker on the left-hand side. And that's working when I deploy it right across the Cloudflare infrastructure. So I have 152 points of presence. What I'm going to do in this worker is I'm going to grab that request, grab a HTTP request, and I can see the request and the response. I can see the body, any headers, you name it. And I'm going to determine what news articles are relevant to where that worker is running. So if you're in Germany, if you're in Austria, if you are in Brazil or wherever else, I'm going to grab some very locale specific news articles. Figure out what the tone is. I'm going to use Watson to help me figure out what that tone of that is. And then I'm going to say, OK, let's go grab some marketing copy from Salesforce to figure out what is the right kind of copy I want to have on this ad, on this marketing page to figure out what that would be. And then I'm going to translate it back to geo. But you know what? I'm a lazy marketer. I don't want to do that all this time. I just want to write one page and deploy it out and have all this happen for me automatically. And that's what we're able to do with Worker. And this is what I think about direct personalization of a worker. So the worker here, as you can see, is doing this here. And I'm happy to share this source code so people can see exactly what I'm doing as a good, nice takeaway. But in effect, I'm doing the Google News search. I'm looking at the tonal analysis here. I'm doing the translation, et cetera, but I can actually put Cloudflare's network to work to actually figure out where these requests are coming to figure out what to translate and how to translate. So in the interest of brevity, I have a couple of examples that I ran. I ran these through a service called Catchpoint, which actually allows me to run these requests from around the world. And it ends up giving me these copy directly translated that is tonally aware based on where the requests are coming from. So we got English, French, if I remember this is Spanish, I did Portuguese, and German as well, all by one thing. Very small example of what's possible with workers. Okay, let's keep going. All right, so I've set up workers as this amazing new capability for building infrastructure and innovation on the edge. But really, the journey doesn't stop here. If I'm going to build really great apps, I need amazing access to data. It's not accessibility to data, but I need to do it in a way that's really, really easy for my developers. But I've on my own personal journey here to think about. Now, as I did say, I've been in the business a few years, so we're going to take a trip down memory lane. So I started my career at Sun Microsystems. Who remembers Sun? Okay, who's written Java? It's okay. I like Java. But I was the JDBC architect many years ago at Sun Microsystems. JDBC was the way in which you talk to a database. I did a bunch of standards, wrote a book. My hot tip for you all is never write a technical book. Don't do it. It has not accelerated my retirement plans whatsoever. But you know what? We thought a lot about what it was about to access data in a way that was easy for our customers. And I worked for somebody called Progress Software, and I did the same thing, but I did it across a variety of different platforms. And then at Salesforce, I thought about, what is the importance of data? So Salesforce as an entity is built primarily on the Oracle database. I introduced HBase into Salesforce as our big data source, and a whole set of features fell out of that. But you know what? What was more important was that we built a set of sort of infrastructure that made it easy to interact with that data. So what came out of Java JDBC is I remember working on things like JDO and Hibernate. With Salesforce, we introduced something called asynchronous SOQL that allowed us to run queries in a reliable fashion with Salesforce. And then with Cloudflare Workers, I'm faced with exactly the same problem. I need to have the right kind of experience in order to interact with data. And I kind of let the cat out of the bag. For us, that's GraphQL. Okay? So I'm really excited today to talk about why GraphQL is really awesome sauce for us and for our developers. What we are really seeing, and these are the key kind of value props that you can see for GraphQL. When I came across this technology, and I'm relatively new to Cloudflare and writing JavaScript on the edge, I was like, wow, this is amazing. I wish I'd had this in my previous life, because this would have gone crazy. It would have been a great thing for us to do. But for my perspective, from a Cloudflare perspective, is that today we want to announce at the beginnings of a new partnership whereby Apollo, GraphQL, and Cloudflare are going to be coming together to build new capabilities such that we can offer a new way to interact with your data with all the goodness that Apollo and GraphQL gives us and all the goodness that we have with Cloudflare Workers down the end. So our journey together is going to be, and I'm moving pretty quickly, I think here, is to build a universal graph API across the REST APIs. That's where we are today. We're right on the mark to be able to do this. And with the kind of capabilities and the packaging we're talking about, is that we'll put you in the ability to you can take full advantage of Cloudflare and really bring in any REST API resources down the end. But it's only the beginning. What is Cloudflare at its core? It's a set of different things in terms of caching, DDoS protection, et cetera, et cetera. Where of our customers' most important data, it's in our cache. So we're also building the cache API as well. That's something that my team is working on right this second, and we hope to release that in the third quarter of this year. But again, this will be another iterative capability that we'll offer on top of Apollo as well. And that will be key in terms of really unlocking the kind of capability that we see. But it's only the beginning, because down the path even further, we're thinking about what it means to have more persistent data on the edge. That's something you'll see us talk about in the future, so a bit of a preview there for you as well. But consistent to it all is the pattern that we get with this down the line. So in closing, what we have with Workers is the ability to build innovation on the edge, deploy it globally in less than 30 seconds, and really allow customers to kind of build some really serious apps at the end. But with the new ecosystems that we have here is a whole set of offerings that we're going to have from a core customer perspective. That's what I have. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you so much.